Hello and good morning, everyone. I think we are ready to start the first side event of today, which is hosted by the International Center for Climate Change and Development, ICCCAD, and also the Global Green Growth Institute, together with the LDC University Consortium for Climate Change, the LUC network. So I am extremely proud and honored to welcome you all to this morning's session. The session is now called National Capacity in the Least Developed Countries for Accelerated Climate Action and Launch of the Capacity Building Program for LDC Universities. It's a bit of a mouthful, it's a long title, but the center of the conversation today is LDC academic capacity as a condition for effective, locally owned climate action. So my name is Ingvild Solvang. I am Deputy Director and Head of Climate Action and Inclusive Development at the Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI. And I will be the humble guide of the discussion this morning. And as Dr. Salimul Hook just introduced in the opening, the soft opening, today is Capacity Day, which holds a traditionally strong position here at PCCB, much thanks to the ICCCAD who actually started it before PCCB came into play. So we will return to that and to Salim in a minute. Now, the importance of capacity building to address climate change can, as has been discussed earlier this morning, not be overstated. And globally, about 70% of developing countries' NDCs and 83% of the NDCs from the least developed countries which have been submitted have put the capacity building as a condition in their NDCs. So the need for capacity building support overwhelms. Oh, great. Welcome also to Madam Chair of the LDC group. It's great to have you. I know you were up until at least midnight last night, so thank you for that. Yeah. So obviously the need for capacity is it overwhelms other forms of international assistance. And today let's dwell on the need for capacity building for the LDC group. And also the way that the LDC University Consortium is actually a part of the formal work program of the LDC group. This session today, we will have a couple of keynote speeches before we have a panel discussion. And I will introduce also the panelists as we go. But first, I would like to invite Madame Madeleine Diouf Sarr of Senegal and the very, very powerful chair of the LDC group here at COP. So if you, Madeleine, would like to start us off in the conversation today to speak a little bit about the importance of capacity, academic capacity in LDC countries and to the LDC group here in the negotiations. Over to you, Madam Madeleine.
Thank you, Ingrid, for inviting us to this event on the capacity building issue for LDCs. You know how we are as LDCs. We are 46 countries. We represent 1 billion of population of the world, but we are also the most vulnerable countries. LDCs countries are emitting less than 1% of emission, and they are facing the impact of climate change. So we can say that LDCs are actually victims of a climate change crisis. So we need really to see how the world will guarantee the support of these communities. I think we have to talk about communities because here we are here in order to see what are the solutions we bring to these communities regarding the adverse effect of climate change they are all facing. So saying that, we know that LDCs are the more poor countries, so the issue of capacity is here. We need really to see how we can strengthen the capacity within LDCs, but also how we can ensure that their competence as expertise is taking on board climate change. To do that, we need to work with universities. In all LDCs countries, we have universities. So we need to ensure that universities are part of this process, because this process is a dynamic one. This process is not just a punctual. You have to build, because climate change is actual, is the middle term, is also the long term. So we need really to ensure that this capacity is built. And we can do it through education. Education, when you mean education, you have universities, because we have to look at what the science is saying. When you talk about adaptation, adaptation is local. So you need also, for this university, to be close to the different government, to be close to experts who are negotiating in order to find appropriate solution for countries, in order to find appropriate solution for communities, taking also the local context, the cultural context. I think this is really important. We see that only 69 projects were being approved by the GCF for LDC out of 177 projects. It represents less than 40% of the fund approval portfolio. And we are talking about the most vulnerable. The total volume represents 154 billion of a total of a GCF, who is 8 billion approved. So as I say, LDCs most vulnerable are really taking a small part of the GCF, who is here in order to help developing countries, vulnerable countries, to face climate change. So having this exercise, having this opportunity to work with universities, through the LAC project, is really highly important. We need really to scale this program. We really need to ensure that all universities within LDCs are part of this program. This program allows them to cooperate with international university. This program allows them to cooperate in the South-South cooperation in order to increase the knowledge and know what are the appropriate tools in each LDC's countries to have sustainable solution for climate change. We have to deal with mitigation, we have to deal with adaptation, we have to deal with loss and damage. So you see the amount of work that we have to deal, and this is only education that can help us through university improvement, participation in this process through LAC program to build this capacity and ensure that we working in the direct direction to mainstream climate change, to shift from the global goal trajectory we are facing actually. And I think we can't do that without knowledge. We can't do that without expertise. We can't do that without cooperation between universities, between all countries. So this is my point to your question, and also thank you for your attention. Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Madeleine. And thank you for taking time off your busy negotiation schedule, and very much of good luck and best of luck to the LDC countries these 2 weeks. Now let's continue then to drill down on the importance of LDC-owned knowledge. And I would like to hand it to the much esteemed Dr. Salim Ol-Hok, who hardly needs an introduction. Now he is the director of the ICCCAD, recently seen both in Times Magazine and The Economist. This week I read his words on the plane over to Egypt. Professor Salim, if you would like to continue from where Madeleine.
Thank you very much, Ingvild, and good morning to everybody. And thank you, Madam Chair, for being with us as well. So what I will do, I'll give you a very brief potted history of capacity building in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It started off with the original UN Framework Convention in Article 6 of the convention. And I'll remind people what Article 6 was about. It was about awareness raising, education, and capacity building. These are motherhood and apple pie issues. There's no contention. There's no adversarial negotiation on these issues. Everybody agrees they need to be done. But the how they got done was an issue. And over the years, there was a lot of international support, particularly funding support from the developed countries for capacity building in developing countries. In the order of $1 billion had been spent by the time we came to Paris in 2015 to negotiate the Paris Agreement. However, all that money, almost all that money, was spent by each developed country funding experts in their own countries to fly into a developing country in Africa, Asia, or Latin America, spend a little time doing workshops and trainings, and then go home. We call them fly-in, fly-out experts. Almost all the money was spent on experts from the developed country giving the money, so they kept the money at home, and they put it on the name of the developing countries that they were supposedly helping. Now, I'm not saying that they didn't do good work, but they did not do permanent work. Everything was temporary. Everything was short term. And one of the big gaps that they did not use, an opportunity they did not use, was to capacitate universities in the developing countries. And as Madam Chair just said, every least developed country has numerous universities. Numerous universities. My country, Bangladesh, has more than 100 universities. But they got no resources. The international consultants got funded to fly in and fly out. They didn't tap or didn't build capacity of the universities. And the universities are the ones who are building capacity of the citizens of those countries who are going to have to face climate change going forward. So one of the contentious, but less contentious than the loss and damage or 1.5 issues in Paris was reforming this form of capacity building. And that came from the least developed countries group. We said, we don't like the way it's being done. It's not being done well. It's not being done properly. It needs to be done differently. And that resulted in an outcome in the Paris Agreement in a new article, Article 11 of the Paris Agreement, on capacity building. So we now have capacity building separate from just general awareness and education, very specific capacity building mandate. It created the Paris Committee on Capacity Building, who have been working very diligently ever since then. And it changed the focus from what we used to call fly-in, fly-out experts to building national capacity to tackle climate change. And not just in developing countries, by the way, although we are talking specifically about the least developed countries here, but it's in all countries, even in developed countries. Every country needs capacity building of different kinds, in different ways, but everybody needs it. And universities are extremely important institutions that have this capacity to build capacity, because that's their job, that's what they do. And incidentally, universities have a track record in many cases that are many hundreds of years old. They're even over 1,000 years old. So empires have come and gone, but universities have stayed. They are the very essence of sustainability as an institution. And so what we have been trying to do is to develop this network of universities, which was done under the leadership of Gebru Jemba, who is also with us when he was the chair, and now continues under the leadership of Madeleine Diouf, who's the current chair of the LDC group. It's a formal group of the least developed countries. My colleague Mizan Khan runs it, so I won't steal his thunder. He'll tell you more about what it does. But that has now grown out of the Paris Agreement, Article 11 on capacity building, and we are very pleased to be collaborating with the Paris Committee on Capacity Building to enhance the ability of all countries to build their own capacity to develop, tackle climate change, and in particular, focus on universities as having a very, very key role in delivering that capacity in every country, universities in every country. I'll stop there. Thank you very much, Ingi.
Thank you very much, Salim, for that. And let me please introduce the other panelists that are up here. I'll start by introducing Gebru Jember Endelev, all the way over there. He is Global Green Growth Institute's lead for climate diplomacy. He, as mentioned by Salim, was the LDC chair for Ethiopia in 2017 onwards, and has been a part of the negotiations for many, many years. He knows the ins and outs of that. And also to my left, we have Hala Al-Hamawi, who is deeply involved in accreditation and readiness for climate finance access in Jordan. And she will be talking to us today about the importance of capacity for that. She works for the Global Green Growth Institute as well. And then we have, last but certainly not least, Professor Mizan Khan, who is Deputy Director of ICCCAD and also technical lead for the LDC University Consortium on climate change. So let me start by asking you a couple of questions, Gebru. You are leading on and providing technical leadership on the so-called Life AR adaptation initiative. So I would like to hand it over to you to explain a little bit about that adaptation. Madam Madeleine said that adaptation is about capacity and is about local solutions. So if you could introduce the Life AR briefly and explain to us the linkage to what we are discussing here today on local capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingevild. Good morning, colleagues. I'm happy to share the why we need different initiatives. As LDCs, we have LAC, we have other renewable energy, but as you all know, adaptation is really a priority and immediate need for us, most vulnerable countries. Then how we need to look the past to shape the future. So in that regard, we have been, LDCs have been the front runners in terms of really implementing adaptation projects through NAPA from 2007 onwards. But we don't see much impact on the ground. Then what's happening? So the first thing that we did was through the LAC, we undertake 100+ projects which have been implemented across developing countries, including LDCs. We do a robust review using LAC member universities across Africa and Asia. So the findings of the review of projects implemented through multilateral and bilateral institutions indicated that most of the interventions are guided by top-down planning. And they are project-based with short lifespan, like 3 years, 4 years. And they're sector-specific as well. And most of the resource, which has been really allocated for the implementation, is spent by the intermediaries in between. So nearly 15% of the resource is reaching to the ground, to the communities. So if we keep doing this business as usual of implementation of adaptation, then will we be able to cope up with the fast-changing environment? The impact is doubling and tripling, and now no one is immune, including developed countries. You can't see the impact across. So should we do the business as usual? That was the starting point for us to think of a business unusual way of really doing things. So for that, during our chairmanship, it was endorsed by the ministers of LDCs. We launched an initiative called Least Developed Countries Initiative for Effective Adaptation and Resilience. We call it LIFE-AR. Then we set key principles on how we should engage in. First, in terms of access to finance, a minimum 70% of the resource needs to reach to the local communities. Second, we need to move from projectized approach into a landscape approach. And the lifespan, and we need to move from project to programmatic approach by integrating plans into the government development short-term and mid-term plans. And at the same time, it should be a bottom-up planning in place. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable. So setting that principle, we managed to pass a number of really steps, which for sake of time, I'm not going to go through it, but at least we started by setting key principles, and we set key asks to our development partners, the key principles that they need to follow, and the key offers that we are going to provide. And with that, we set a vision to build carbon resilient economy by 2030 and to a net zero future by 2050, which is in line with Paris. Following that, we managed to come up with 6 front-runner countries just to start to test the initiative. In Francophone countries, we have Burkina Faso and, of course, Gambia, West Africa, and we have Uganda, Malawi, Ethiopia, and Bhutan. So these countries are at different stages of initial piloting phase, establishment phase, and 2 of them, Uganda and Ethiopia, are going to start piloting. So in brief, this is what LIFE-AR is. And in relation to capacity, I no more agree when colleagues say that we don't have capacity. We have capacity, but we don't know how to use it. If you look at our universities, research centers, if you took my country, we have more than 40 government big universities, research centers. There are professors there. It's a matter of mainstreaming climate change into the curriculum. And we need to bring them on board to be part of the solution, because we need everyone to be part of the solution to address climate change. So mainstreaming needs to happen in the planning phase, where we need to mainstream adaptation and mitigation into government plans when we set our NDCs and our LEDs. And in implementation, even finance needs to be blended. We need to move out of projectized approach. And even reporting, we need to reduce burden for parties. So mainstreaming of the regular reporting of the government system will help to get more robust information on adaptation as well as mitigation. So in line with that, why not we really mainstream capacity development into existing systems? If you do that, as Professor Salim mentioned, universities will be there even if governments are changing. So we have a residue somewhere to reuse it. So with that understanding, in the LIFE-AR process, we engage LIFE-AR LAC member university to be part of the LIFE-AR implementation in our frontrunner countries. Besides, LAC has been instrumental really in assessing, providing guidance, developing guidelines and tools for this initiative. So I think the future should be mainstreaming across the value chain and inward looking towards our service. Where are we? How can we really make use of existing resources, our universities and research centers? That's the way out which I look at on, and how we are also implementing LIFE-AR. Thank you.
Lovely, Gebru. Thank you so much again for that insight. Now let me turn to you, Hala, in Jordan, and Gebru talks about mainstreaming it into the entire capacity building, into the entire value chain. Now, Hala sits on the investment side of it, and the readiness to mobilize climate finance into countries. So if you could speak a little bit about how you deal with capacity building as a component of GCF readiness in particular. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engvald. I'm happy to be here and to speak about our Green Climate Fund Readiness Project in Jordan. So basically, GGGI in Jordan is delivering the second readiness project where we completed our first one in 2020. GGGI is working closely with the Ministry of Environment. And just to give you a brief, so when we are talking about the Green Climate Fund Readiness Project and its importance as it is the largest climate change fund, so overall the project aims to enhance the capacity of national institutions to engage efficiently with the Green Climate Fund. So there is different components where we work on capacity building, and I'll focus here on 3 components. So the first one is the direct access entity candidates. So in Jordan, we are working on with 2 entities. One of them is a national bank called the Cities and Villages Development Bank. And the second one is a private sector entity that is mainly working on the renewable energy and matter of equity investment. So what we do with them is build their capacity to comply to the GCF requirements, including social and environmental safeguard, fiduciary policies, and other policies as well. Then we work with them to train them how to identify projects, how to prioritize them according to the needs, to the country needs, and how to develop the project as well for submission. This is the first one. And the second one, where universities are involved, the public-private dialogues. We run public-private dialogues between public representative and representative from different institutions, including companies, profit companies, universities, civil society, and international organizations. So through this dialogue, we aim to increase awareness about climate finance and how to access climate finance, specifically the Green Climate Fund. We also work on identifying what is needed in matter of policy enhancement to increase investments in a green way. And to be honest, I was really proud when we started engaging universities and professors from academia, because many of them introduced their interest to be part of understanding how to access climate finance, and perhaps start doing research on that as well. And the last component is the GCF operational manual. So it is really important to have a guideline. How is the internal process of the GCF in matter of project pipeline development and management, where we work on developing this guideline. And to be honest, I would like to highlight here that I really encourage universities to start thinking of being part of developing guidelines and applying for tenders, for example, that is targeting researchers to develop such guidelines. And after developing those guidelines, we train the institutions on using them to understand better how they can access, what is the process, what is the document needed to be filled in order to access such finance. And the last thing I'd like to mention about project submission, which is a key step to access climate finance. So through the first readiness, we have developed 10 concept notes for different projects in water, waste, transport, tourism, and the health sector, where some concept notes are cross-cutting. And after developing those concept notes, we work on enhancing the concept notes to be projects for submission through conducting pre-feasibility studies. And to be honest, there is a successful story for one of the concept notes that turned on to a real project that will be implemented soon in Jordan. It is an e-mobility in Petra, where it is an interesting site and one of the world wonders places in the world. So yeah, thank you very much, Engvald.
Really great, and I think we can imagine that value chain of climate finance and all the needs for real technical, solid capacity along the way and imagining, and I really like the encouragement that Hala brings to the universities of getting involved there. I want to stay with you, Hala, just a little bit, and I know you also self-identify and are identified as a youth activist. Now, in Jordan is one of those interesting places where we see so many powerful young and also female leaders in climate action. At the same time, it's one of those countries that has among the fewest or the lowest participation rate of women in the labor market, and also under and unemployed youth is also part of the government's challenge there. So if you want to talk about just a little bit about the enhanced participation of women and youth in mitigation and adaptation in Jordan.
Thank you very much, Engvald, for the question. So just let me give you some facts about Jordan so I can start highlighting what is needed. So first, Jordan is known for the limited natural resources, and it is one of the most scarce countries in matter of water in the world. So you can imagine how many challenges Jordan is facing and the community is suffering from. Yes, there is high rate of unemployment. As per 2020, unemployment reached 25%, where the highest percentage comes from youth. And in matter of women engagement in the labor force, unfortunately, it didn't exceed 15% in Jordan. But what is interesting is that the women graduate percentage is higher from Jordanian universities. And to be honest, Jordan is known for its educated people. So 42% approximately have minimum secondary certificate, graduated from secondary school. So I'll start to be honest. In general, what are the reasons behind lack of engagement for women in the labor force? So there is study and research that proved the following. First, having reliable public transport system is a big challenge for women in Jordan to participate in the labor force. And I'm talking here about the category from 15 years and above about women. So we really need reliable transport system that is organized, where you can schedule your time and go at exactly at time to your work, and accessible one. So personally, I interviewed an intern where unfortunately she couldn't join us just because of transport. So this is a real story. The second reason is that we are still seeing gender stereotype and bias. So let me give you example. So unfortunately, still some companies refuse or reluctant to hire women that are engineers in the field. They prefer men over women. And as we discussed and brainstormed yesterday, so if we are talking about waste management sector, the formal one, so to be honest, until today, I've never seen a woman working in the formal waste management sector in matter of waste picking in Jordan. So those are just examples. Now let me go to the rural area and participation of women, where the informal sector is there in matter of agriculture. So it is notable that women engagement as farmers in the agriculture is high and significant, and their contribution to food security in Jordan is important to everyone. But unfortunately, their awareness about climate change is limited. And you can tell how much practices that we need to follow when we understand the impact of climate change in that area. So those who are working in the informal sector, they are in need for awareness. And to be honest, I find universities are the best place to participate in increasing awareness for this category. Another area regarding rural areas, so we have in Jordan that many women work on traditional handicraft, and many of them using they try to recycle material and do handicraft out of that. But unfortunately, those products are not registered, which means that their copyright is not protected. So definitely there is a need to have a system where they can register their product and protect their copyright. And I believe that the National Adaptation Plan, one of the project is to have a system to protect those women working in this sector. Now I'll get back to the point where it is unemployment, the unemployment and underemployment. So yes, 25% of the population are unemployed. To be honest, there is different reasons behind it, but let me focus on what is needed to be done, especially for youth. So when we are talking about youth, especially at the time they are studying in the universities, I believe that universities, professors across Jordan, they are the ones that can help this category to prepare themselves and engage and get a job later on. How is that can be done? Through two ways. I believe we need mentorship programs in Jordan where professors can be mentors for students in matter of directing them about opportunities for internship and building their capacity before getting into jobs. And definitely having that experience, whether it was an internship or volunteering, will qualify them and build their experience to be prepared for applying to jobs. The second thing is skills. So universities, I think, is the right school for building student skills, where many professors can work on programs that can tackle the needed skills for youth when they graduate in matter of research and matter of time management, for example, and other soft skills as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So the value chains of climate action, I think we are talking about now, and we can see the interconnectedness of academic and the role of academics in that. So let's return now to the LDC University Consortium of Climate Change, and I will hand it over now to Professor Mizan Khan, who is technical lead for the LUC network, to, I believe, announcing and launching also a training program that will come up very soon for the LUC network, but also to give a brief, give us a better understanding of the LUC network's work at the moment. So please, Professor.
Thank you, Ingvild. Very good morning to you all. As you already got to hear about LUC, I will share with you how does LUC work, for example. Currently, we have about 16 or 17 members from 17 LDC universities, and our model is to have one university from each of the LDCs as the hub, and that university will organize other universities in that country. And as in Bangladesh, for example, we have established the research and practice platform. We call it Gabeshona. So we encourage all the LUC partners to establish kind of a nationwide such a climate change research and practice platform so that everybody can be brought in, and each stakeholder, all the stakeholders can be sensitized and mainstreamed, climate change education. Now talking about specific climate change education, our model under LUC, we promote both generic and a specific capacity building and education. Generic in the sense that our university, for example, has got a dedicated climate change and development program. Very few universities in the world have got dedicated such programs, specifically on climate change. So this is one model. Another model also we promote through short course training programs on specific issues. For example, vulnerability assessment or climate diplomacy or climate financing. So we have semester-wide, we run semester-wide short course program. So this is how we work. Now about coming to, for example, fund mobilization. We had very hard time, as Professor Salimul Haq has mentioned before, that the donors did not buy universities kind of as one partner to be funded for capacity building. But now, gradually, they are coming to terms. We made some research 3 years ago, which organizations, which multilateral, bilateral agencies, for example, do fund universities. And then in our research, which has been inserted as a chapter in our book, we found then in 2018, only NORAD used to fund higher education at the university level. But now more and more development partners are coming to fund universities, and we are also having some funding for LUC. So for the last 3 years, we have been running one project called Loss and Damage Fund in the LDC, Loss and Damage in the LDCs. We had in the first cohort 6 countries where those 6 colleagues from those 6 LDCs presented their findings, country assessments, and what next at COP25 in Madrid. And at this COP, we are having another 6 countries as the second cohort, second phase, funded by the Open Society Foundation. So we will be having their presentations on 8th of evening, where Madam Chair also will attend. So LUC works under the leadership of the LDC Chair, and now we are under the leadership of Madam Madeline.
Yeah, any any matrix I think we should be working on. I'll be very delighted to hear some of your input on that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, Beam, for that excellent and challenging question. So there are 2 levels at which I would answer it. The first level is a simple output level, okay? The number of students graduating from my university. That's one. Whether they're good graduates, bad graduates, they do something with that knowledge or not, I don't know. They graduate, they pass the exam, they become graduates. That's one, very basic one. But then we need to track progress over time. One tracker is acquiring knowledge, but more important is using knowledge. And using knowledge requires a longer term evaluation, monitoring, keeping track of people. And that is why we have utilized the format of universities who are not consulting companies. We're not just, we do a project and then we forget about it after the project ends. We can continue the relationship. We have alumni. For example, in my university, we run a master's degree in climate change and development. We are now in our 10th year. We have more than 150 graduates, and we keep in touch with them. In fact, many of them are here working. We've been doing capacity building of LDC negotiators for many years. In fact, Gebru Jember, our previous chair, and Madeleine have all been through capacity building programs that we have developed and capacitated them. They are now experts themselves. They don't need capacity building. They can do capacity building themselves. So it's a long-term process. You have to track it over time. And the outcome is, do we influence the decision-making in the UNFCCC? And the answer is yes. The LDCs previously did not have a voice here. They do now. There is no decision that can take place in the UNFCCC without the LDC group signing off on it and saying yes, okay? That is actual power and utilization of capacity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I see a couple of hands. I think we have a few more minutes. Am I right? Yeah. So we can take, I see 2 questions. Let's just get them both at the same time. And I think maybe we limit it to the 3 I see, and then I think we need to close. So please go ahead.
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. I just want also to align myself with the previous speakers about the importance of including the universities and research centers. But I will also say it's not, as you said, Professor, only about acquiring knowledge, it's about using knowledge. Using knowledge, I want to draw the attention of the importance of having national-based reports that have been done by a good capacitated person, but also additional information, and I want just also to highlight the importance. Before the speaker before said, the donors, the relationship between donors and universities, research centers, in relationship to supporting laboratories. So, for example, if we we have an interest, for example, in a country to develop local-based emission factors, one of the things that hinders this is the availability of, if we want to monitor a project, if we want to write a project, we need also so many information that we need a reliable laboratories to develop, not only to use the regional or the international database. And here comes a problem. You always, as a research center or at a university, the donors don't speak to you. And I would really ask here if you allow me to set a recommendations that donors and climate partners should also include the research center in their and universities in their portfolio. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the gentleman over there, thanks.
Thank you. This is Jodahe from Ethiopia. I just wanted to ask a random information, maybe question where I've been noting that most of the capacity building was focused on universities and how we can formally educate a lot of individuals. And have you ever had an understanding that most youth are actually found in the informal setting where there is on the social media or other sectors where maybe the research can be done or maybe potentially could have more impact on the youth? So maybe if anybody could discuss upon that. Thank you very much.
That's great. And then we have one in the corner there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. It's a great honor to have been here with you. But part of my question was the youth gentleman. But the other aspect would be the 46 countries that I mentioned earlier with regard to empowerment and capacity building. I wanted to know how much work has been done or is being done with countries where we have not necessarily been listed upon that, let alone have any hope of getting that as a direct, such that we can also benefit from it. Because I'm coming from Botswana, and I represent the local authorities, and we are really, really worried about the way the LED is going, our interpretation, our understanding of it as a nation. So it suggests to me that there's more to be done in terms of capacitating countries such that we are assuring the coverage is holistic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And could we have a 30-second or 1 minute from you? That would be really excellent. And then we have 2 women and 2 men, and that's balanced. So
thank you. Thank you for your presentations. My name is Maha from Sudan. I'm a university lecturer. I'm talking about the database. Okay, we need to initiate mechanism to network the researchers in the universities, because I know, as the professor said, there is a different research, different activities, okay, toward climate change, but not networking to reflect the results and to consider as an output for the gap in capacity building, okay, and connected with each other. This is what I mean. We need to initiate networking to acquire database considered as a reference for us. Thank you.
A very important point there. So let me just hand it over to the panel now for a brief response to these comments, if you have any. So please go ahead. I think Professor Mizan.
Yes, the issue that you have raised about the media, which is more effective, certainly. And we work, in LAC, we have a dedicated LAC youth program where we encourage this kind of activities, and we have quite a number of young people with us in our team who do these kind of activities so that these instruments can reach to the wider youth group. And in Bangladesh, for example, we also work with the local communities, local governments, because capacity building starts from awareness raising up to developing deep expertise. So we work also with communities, local governments, government officials at different levels, at the district, at the national levels. So capacity building is a very capacious framework, you know. It's not just a one-off or one instrument base. So we have our wider networks and wider kind of set of instruments for doing this. Thank you.
Any last final comments from the panelists? Yeah, let's...
Just a quick comment on what Professor Mizan just said. Capacity building is a vast area, and everybody needs capacity. I need capacity, you need capacity, everyone needs capacity. But it has to be targeted, and it has to be specific to the needs of the persons. And so the system that we need to develop, ecosystem that we need to develop, is to have specific pieces of capacity building provision, providers, and receivers, and match them up, and then network. And this is what we are trying to do at the COP. The COP is a place where we can network from Sudan, from Ethiopia, from all the different countries, get to know each other, interact with each other, and then develop potential collaborations going forward. That's how the LUC started. We had a few universities from the least developed countries here. We said, why don't we do something? And then we started to design it, and we came up with the program, and it has now become an official program of the least developed countries group. So you have to start somewhere. The problem is vast, but you have to start somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much for concluding there, Professor Salim. Now, I think congratulations is the right thing to say to the LUC network and its important contributions. And as we have discussed today, the value chain of delivering effective climate action is really depending on good nationally owned capacity, particularly in the least developed countries. And to highlight some of the recommendations that I think come out of this, universities get involved in climate action. And also for universities, get involved in networks such as the LUC networks. For policymakers, look around to the academics in your country and involve them in your climate work. For donors, start funding research institutions. I think that was said by one of the audience members here. So funding to universities, please. That's super important for climate action. And for institutions such as the Global Green Growth Institute that I represent and others, fly in, fly out is the old-fashioned way. We need a new business model which is really strengthening the capacity at national and local level, and with emphasis on the academics institutions. Like what Professor Salim has said, let's leave this main takeaway. Academic institutions outlive governments. They are what represent sustainability and effective solutions nationally and locally. So with that, thank you all very much for joining our session today. And happy to leave the stage to the next side event. Thank you.